What's going on, Kings fans? Welcome to the 2017 LA Kings Media Roundtable, brought to you by Mayor's Manor and the Fourth Period. I'm Keith Korneluk.
And I'm Chris Kalaziewski, and we're here with a very special program. We brought together a unique group of people from a variety of backgrounds to talk about the past, present, future of Kings hockey.
So here we go. Enjoy this special roundtable coming up right now. Okay, and with the Las Vegas expansion draft coming up, Kings have to, they're only allowed to protect a few players. Who do they expose and who goes? I mean, Vegas has to take at least one Kings player.
But how long is it? They have to make.
To me, that's the question, Brian, that really comes back to about why Dustin Brown might be the guy for Vegas to take, because it comes down to really four guys that most likely Vegas would be interested in from Los Angeles. It comes down to Trevor Lewis, Nick Dowd, Braden McNabb, or Dustin Brown.
With respect to the expansion and protected list, is that the name he didn't put in there was Derek Forbort.
Yeah.
And John knows, and I've heard as well, that they're going to protect Derek Forbort.
Yep.
And they're going to go 4-4, which to me, but I don't know. I mean, and plus now you have issues with Alec Martinez, chronic groin injury. Forbort had knee surgery in the offseason. So the fact that they're protecting Forbort and the organization thinks he is a reliable, dependable top four defenseman, starting to worry a little bit about speed and skill here, because he did not. And look, maybe it was them holding on to a first-round pick, and maybe they wanted this guy to succeed, but what I saw was a 5'6" defenseman. Now they're thinking he's a top four guy. Does it affect the moves they make? Does it affect the free agency? But at this point in time, it looks like he's going to be on the protected list. Now, granted, if you went 7-3, you would protect a Dowd or maybe a Shore or something like that. But to me, that's
Nick Shore's not getting protected.
Yeah, well,
maybe
I'm saying
Trevor Lewis.
if you went 7-3,
Paulie Shore will get protected.
Well, hey, you want to go back to Darryl? That's one of the failings. Shore was a productive player at every level until he came here.
Yeah.
And you've always said Darryl scared the offense out.
Absolutely scared the offense. He was
but
leading the AHL at the time that he was called up, and then never produced
I
again.
think that you're going to see Forbort on this team, and he'll probably have a prominent role, because I believe they're convinced he's the top four defenseman. We'll see, because again, I don't want him playing with Dowdy. I think you got to go back to Jake Muzzin and Drew as the top pair. Jake had a horrible season, but
that's if Jake Muzzin is still here. Yeah. But let's go back to the Forbort thing, though, because I want to play the counter to that. So what I was told a couple of months ago is that the plan was to protect Derek Forbort, and part of it was asset protection. Part of it was the risk of losing another first-round pick, the way they lost Thomas Hickey, which they still talk about to this day. You would think they're over it, but there are people inside that hockey operations group that aren't happy about the fact that they lost a first-round pick to waivers, and they didn't want to do that again. But that's the old guard. That's Lombardi, who was trying to protect. So I'm not as convinced that they are still as committed to protecting Derek Forbort as they were just 30 days ago. And if that's the case, now it does open up a series of options. And the other thing is, there might be a trade involving Alec Martinez or Jake Muzzin.
Absolutely could be.
And the thinking was that trade option wasn't going to be available prior to the expansion draft. If they would have made that trade, one of those two players, at the trade deadline or during the season, to me that would have been ideal, because it would have put him in a position to go 7-3. Yeah. But since they didn't make that trade, and they think that they're not going to be able to make it until after the expansion draft, they have to protect Muzzin, you have to protect Martinez. So now it comes down to Forbort, and you almost have to protect Forbort if, in the back of your mind, you're going to trade Muzzin or Martinez. Because if you lose Forbort, and then to get help on offense, and for cap reasons, you trade Muzzin or Martinez, who's left on that team that has any sort of experience?
Well, you're kind of bringing up, you're arguing about protecting Derek Forbort, which is kind of frightening in my opinion. So this brings up a larger question of what are the Kings going to do? I mean, where are they at now? What are they going to do? Do you blow this thing up? They have nothing on the roster. How do you replenish?
Well, I disagree. I disagree that they have nothing coming up. They have Paul LaDue coming up on defense.
Good.
Paul LaDue is a legit top four defenseman in the NHL, and
not yet, but he's potentially a legit.
It's the role that he's going to play. You don't need him in a 5-6 role. You can let him play on the second pairing. If Voynov doesn't come back, there's a guy who slides right in behind Drew as a second pairing right shot player.
I was waiting for that.
I got to get this in. There was one Kings person that told Dennis and I that the only thing that he would protect Forbort with was with a condom.
Okay, so back to that.
And
I got a joke, but I'm not going to say it.
No, you can't.
In the case of LaDue,
it's not NC-17.
Don't you think, though, that this was a guy that kind of got pushed around physically that just, I don't know. That's not the guy that.
Who, LaDue?
LaDue.
Yeah, he got put. Yeah, but he could.
Guys,
It's called the weight room.
It's a small sample size. You're talking about a young player. You're talking about one of the top
Yeah,
college.
he's 24.
It's still, the defensemen don't mature until they're about 26. This is one of the top defensive players in all of college hockey. And the Kings, again, credit to their scouting staff for being able to draft a guy so low, for them to be able to be patient with this guy in his development process. He played at North Dakota, one of the top schools in the country. No, he is absolutely a legit player.
But don't credit their scouting staff. Look at the last few #1 picks they've got. Nothing.
See, I take exception to that. Again, in the last 10 #1 draft picks that the LA Kings have selected, 9 of them play in the National Hockey League. The only #1 pick that doesn't play in the NHL is Colton Tubert. What's everybody's problem with who they've selected in the first round?
Who are those players?
Adrian Kempe.
Nothing.
Trevor Lewis. Well,
Trevor Lewis, he's okay.
You can go look.
Trevor Lewis has 2 Stanley Cups and plays his role perfectly. He plays his
Don't
role
defend too hard
perfectly.
because I'm going to throw out the trump card right now.
Trump?
Right?
What's he have to do with it?
Okay. In 2010, they traded up. They got Derek Forbort, and the guy picked behind him was Vladimir Tarasenko.
Look,
So
I would
they also go hard to defend these guys. Here's the problem. I'll tell you what the problem is with this organization and getting these guys, which I agree with you, on the late rounds, they are, I think, without parallel. They pick guys who are at the end of the development cycle. Only one guy, Kempe, is 19, 20 years old. LaDue's older. Brzezinski's older. Mercer's older. That's the problem. Is that when we see these guys at the NHL level, they're not going to go up 2 more levels. They're probably at their high watermark.
Agree.
Well, and here's
that's why I want to respond to that because I do agree with that. That was my comment all year on Michael Mersch. Why is Michael Mersch in the American Hockey League?
Right.
Because he's not going to develop any further. He is who he is. So you have to get him games in the NHL. You have to either prove, and up until now, nobody has the proof. Everybody has an opinion, but nobody has the proof. Michael Mersch, if he is an NHL player or if he isn't an NHL player, keeping him in the American Hockey League did nothing. He needed to be in the NHL. At least with Kempe when he was in the AHL, you knew this player was still progressing and he was still getting better. And I do disagree with you. Kempe brings an element of speed that this team does not have. He'd be perfect on the third line. He's Jeff Carter-like. He absolutely.
All right, Kings fans, I hope you enjoyed that edition of the Roundtable. We've got lots more for you, so tune in to Mayor's Manor and the Fourth Period. I'm Keith Korneluk.
And I'm Chris Kalaszewski.
We'll see you soon.